kind of just, you know, what my thoughts are initially, especially compared to my Tuareg 660. And I think, you know, part of my other video that's kind of compiled here is the engine is absolutely fantastic. It does obviously have a little bit more get up and go. I mean, it is a 890 versus the 660, and although those, you know, little pieces do mean a lot, I do find that the torque down low is good, and I find that the Tuareg from first to second gear a little laggy. This is not, so a little bit of a key difference there, but the Tuareg does well. Once you get up in second, third, fourth, I mean, you start rocking and rolling from there, and it does well. So ride comfortability wise, I would tell you that the Tuareg is more comfortable. Like, the seat is more comfortable. The Aprilia kind of sits a little bit like the Africa Twin, where you kind of sit down into the bike, and I can be flat-footed here. I'm not really flat-footed on this. Now, granted, I know I have some different seat configurations and some different things, but I feel like the Aprilia is a little bit more comfortable on the highway. Also, the wind buffeting, I talked about that. The screen on the Aprilia is just a little bit bigger, and gives you a little bit more blockage from the wind than here. Fairing wise, they've done a nice job on the new 2023, as you guys can tell here. A little bit wider, so it does eat up a little bit more of the wind. And you know, based on the 790 that I rode, yeah, I could definitely feel the wind kind of being diverted from you. Plus, the fuel tanks on this are lowered, so that I did talk about too, was that you've got the fuel tanks on this are lower versus the Aprilia, so I feel like the Aprilia is a little bit top heavy compared to this bike. So again, I just, you know, those are some things that stand out to me right now. Just now that I'm on the Aprilia, you can kind of hear that growl too as well. So the windshield is a little bit bigger. I will say that you have to shift up a little bit higher than you do on the KTM, but again, a little bit of engine differential size and stuff like that probably contributes to that. But this is just a kind of me giving an idea between the two. If you can see, I'm actually flat-footed on here versus on the KTM, where it sits just so much higher that usually I just get one foot on the ground. And so if you're off-road, I got a feeling that for people that are vertically challenged, that, you know, it's probably better off with the Aprilia, just because you sit lower in the seat, and the windscreen is a little bit bigger, so I don't have as much wind banging on me. Now, the KTM though is a little bit wider with the fairings, as you guys can see here. So a little bit different. So therefore, and hopefully you guys can hear me over all the wind, but therefore there's less wind on the KTM down below, but on the windshield. So it's kind of a trade-off between the two. I think if you were doing longer hauls and doing more touring, that the Tuareg 660 was probably a little bit better in that department, just because of ergonomics and comfortable piece. Great, capable machine. I've taken it off-road. You guys have seen those videos, but again, there's just little things between the, so I can actually, with the button, you guys can see that I can switch between a lot of the segments, and urban, adventure, off-road, all that stuff, and it's all done with the flick of the button, which is really cool. And I'm just surprised the KTM, with it being a little bit more expensive, doesn't have that feature. So a little bit disappointed in that with the KTM, because again, right here, the button down here has that capability for the Aprilia 660 to rotate through your ride modes. And Quickshifter is a lot nicer, I will say, on this. Now I am having the quickshifter adjustment put onto the KTM, and we'll have to get back to you on that once it gets installed. But right out of here, now granted, now with the KTM, what's nice is that the quickshifter comes with it. On this, on the Aprilia, you have to get that added, but the quickshifter is really nice on the Tuareg. So like, you can hear that shifting is just a lot easier, but you don't have as much pull in first. You got to get the second and third before you kind of get that nice little pull that you feel when riding it. And again, you know, been doing this for a couple years, have multiple different bikes already, and I can even tell that difference, even being still a novice rookie, in my opinion, even though I've got over 40-some thousand miles in the last, like I said, 2 years of doing all this. But as you all can see, you know, I'm doing 35, you know, and it wants to be between 4th and 5th, like, so again, that's how it feels versus the KTM when I'm doing this speed. So, but she handles well. I mean, the Aprilia is really a nice ride. Like, it's comfortable. Like, the KTM is definitely off-road. You can feel it. It's more of a rugged ride. It's not as smooth. And again, a little bit different, you know, setup for both bikes. I think this Aprilia, if you don't want to get into the GSs or the multistradas and spend big money for the 1250s, you know, that size, the Pan Americans and stuff like that, this Aprilia 660 will be perfect between both the big bike, you know, like a compromise between the midweight bike and that gives up a little bit of the comfort features versus the big bikes that are just big, bulky, and they're heavy. They're heavy to pick up. I know, trust me. I've had great experience with all that. So I would tell you that if you're looking for something that's easy to handle, easy to ride, comfort, right out the box, capabilities, and granted you'll have to add a few things like I did, which is the quick shifter. I'd highly recommend that. And I also added the heated grips. I'm not doing the heated grips on the KTM because the KTM will most likely be off-road and I don't need heated grips there. So yeah, I would tell you that this is exactly a bike for someone that's looking for a midweight bike that wants to have that capability to do long hauls, because you're going to have enough engine to do that and you're still going to have the comfortability. So I think you're going to be fantastic with these. So hear that grind? That's just really nice right out the, you know, you can get really right after it. Might not have the hammer down of the KTM, but you have enough go-go juice here. I wanted to talk about just a few of the differences. Both got 600 miles on it. It's had its first service. It's getting ready to do its first service. Not going to get into a lot of specs. My good buddy, like I said in the video, Ian, does all the specs on these things. I just wanted to give you kind of, again, from a layman, novice person that owns both bikes, for 600 miles, a little bit of differences between the two. So again, obviously the KTM, this is not the S, it's the R. So the R is going to be more off-road focused. The Tuareg is going to be more of a balance between touring and off-road. And you guys have probably seen some videos. I have taken this off-road. It does very well. In the videos, you'll hear me talk about the comfortability of this versus this. I could sit flat-footed here. This, not so much. It's higher. It's actually higher than my GSA. So, great bikes. Obviously, the power, 890 versus the 660. Going to be a little bit differentiation point there. It gets up and moves as a KTM should. The Aprilia does well too, as you saw in the videos. It gets up and goes. First to second's a little, I don't know if you want to call it laggy or just not as quick a response as this is. But a couple of main differences. Now, the KTM comes with a quick shift already on here. This does not. I had to add the quick shifter, but between the two, now that I have the quick shifter on here, man, this thing is super smooth. Little clunky. I'm getting first service go have maybe some adjustments put on, and I'll circle back with you on that. Again, wind buffeting, I would tell you now that they've expanded this down below the fairing on the KTM, and they put the gas tanks down below. Weighting wise, this is a little bit more top heavier than this now. And then obviously this blocks wind a little bit better on your legs on your lower side. Windshield's bigger than this. Again, a little bit more touring, off-road focus. So you're not going to get the wind protection on this as you would on the Tuareg. So if you're looking in between the two, I would tell you this is probably more suited for more touring with off-road capabilities, and this is off-road with touring capabilities. So that's a big difference between the two. This is a little bit more comfortable. That seat, I'm sure you know there's plenty of seat options or whatever, but the current standard seats that come on both of them, this is more comfortable than this one. Both have 21/18 tubeless tires. Pretty cool. This I added heated grips. This I did not, and probably will not, as I stated in the video. And so that gives you a little bit of a taste between the two. A more kick. I've only had it off-road a little bit on the KTM. This one I actually have taken on the Southern Ohio Adventure Loop, and it did extremely well, no issues. They will get tested out here over the next few months, more off-road capabilities and what's going on, but I wanted to give a first 600-mile view of the two and a little bit of the nuances and differences. So if you're in the market for a mid-weight, mid-size bike, if you want to do more off-road, I would tell you the KTM. If you want to balance between touring and off-road, then I would tell you probably the Tuareg. This one is great, probably going to trailer this out more so. This one you can actually ride out to a location. And again, you can make changes on this bike. You can add a different windshield, you can do some things. Or you look at the S version of the 890 versus the R, which is a little bit more touring focused than the R. But this thing is a beast. I know it's going to be a beast off-road. I rode the 790R in Colombia. That's really why I purchased this thing, because I know what this is capable of off-road. I know this is going to be solid, and engine's capable, like I said, but this is going to be more touring. This is going to be more off-road. But I wanted to share this with you. First 600 miles. Again, this is not big comparison. It's just, you know, top 600 miles. My buddy, again, Ian at Big Rock Moto does a lot of this stuff, so you probably see some things that are coming down the pike from him once he gets his hands on one of these. And obviously, you know, he has a 660 Tuareg, but very happy with both bikes. First 600 miles, been fantastic. And, you know, again, more to come. Let you guys know how it does, and we'll go from there. Take care. Hope everybody's well. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. In the video, I left one thing out. So if you can see this button here, it's right below the on-off. This is a button that changes the modes. And if you see this up here, you can see that Explorer, Urban, Off-Road, Individual, Explorer, even back to Urban. But that is controlled by this button right here, which makes that very nice compared to the KTM. So on the KTM, there is no button over here, as you can see. So over here, you have to go back into here and hit set. And if once you do that, it shows up here, and you'll see ride mode, and then it goes here, and then you have to go back to your button here and press this up. So you have street, rally, off-road, rain, street. But you have to come back here, hit the set button, then you have to get out of here. So there is not one button like there is on the Aprilia for changing your ride mode. So big difference. Little shocked that the 2023 KTM does not have that button like the Tuareg. So it does make a nice feature for the Tuareg.